Welcome Charter Board members and school leaders. This is the second in a series of 3 mini-courses on preventing audit findings. The 3 mini-courses focus on how to prevent findings related to material misstatements, internal control over financial reporting, and legal compliance. The topic of this video is how to prevent audit findings related to material weakness in the school's internal control system, a system of checks to prevent and detect errors and fraud. Strong internal controls can help prevent unlawful transactions and errors that may lead to loss of confidence in board and school leadership and personal liability for directors. Would you like to review the law and gain ideas for improving internal controls? Would you like resources shared by another charter school? This mini-course may help you. In this mini-course, you will review the law, gain ideas, test your knowledge, and receive a certificate of completion. When reviewing the law and ideas, think about how you can help your school prevent audit findings. Let's start by reviewing the law. Minnesota Statutes, Section 124E.16, Subdivision 1A, states that a charter school is subject to the same financial audits, audit procedures, and audit requirements as a district, with a few exceptions. Minnesota Statutes Section 124E.16, Subdivision 1B, specifies that the charter school must submit an audit report to the commissioner and its authorizer annually by December 31st. The audit report must include a report on internal control structure. An internal control structure includes the mechanisms, rules, and procedures to help ensure the integrity of financial and accounting information, promote accountability, and prevent fraud. The auditor will examine internal control procedures over accounting and financial reporting systems to verify that they are sufficient to prevent misstatements. Misstatements are incorrect information in the financial information that the charter board relies on to make decisions. The report on internal controls will be clean if the school has checks and balances to prevent material sources of misstatements due to error or fraud. Minnesota Statutes Section 124E.16 requires a written report to the Education Commissioner explaining how the material weakness will be resolved if the audit finds a material source of misstatement. A material weakness exists when there is a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement will not be prevented, detected, and corrected on a timely basis. A material misstatement is omitted, incomplete, or untrue information in a financial statement or related notes that could affect the financial decisions of one who relies on it. A deficiency in internal control exists when the design or operation of a control does not allow for prevention, prompt detection, and correction of misstatements due to errors or fraud. To summarize, what are some important points to remember when taking action to prevent audit findings and damages due to weak internal controls? Charter schools are required to submit an audit to the Education Commissioner and authorizer by December 31st each year. The audit must include a report on internal control structure. Auditors verify that there are internal control systems to prevent, detect, and correct errors and fraud on a timely basis when assessing risk. Specifically, the auditor will examine journal entries, receipts, bank account reconciliation, payroll, procurement, issuance of checks, handling of cash, and credit card use for internal controls. An important internal control is separation of duties for conducting transactions, such that one person is not responsible for multiple steps in the process. When there is not an internal control structure in place to prevent, identify, and correct errors and fraud, the school is at risk of damages due to misstatements. A material weakness is deficiency in internal control over financial reporting, such that there is a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement will not be prevented or detected. A deficiency in internal control exists when the design or operation of a control does not allow prevention or detection and correction of misstatements on a timely basis. What are some ideas that may help prevent audit findings due to weak or non-existent internal controls? Follow documented internal control processes for journal entries, receipts, bank account reconciliation, payroll, procurement, issuance of checks, handling of cash, and credit card use. Establish and do not disregard the importance of internal control policies and procedures, and do not allow management to override procedures. Ensure employees and contracted staff are assigned segregated duties so that more than one person approves, initiates, receives, and verifies completion of each transaction. Ensure no single person has too much authority to carry out tasks without being checked. Ensure that separate logins are established for each authorized user of a system, with specific rights defined and documented according to the position and authorized authority. Review the school's conflict of interest and nepotism policies, and verify that no conflicts exist to minimize risk of a conflict of interest, creating the motivation to engage in fraud. Be alert to an employee's outside interests, and always remember it is the duty of the board to prevent misuse of the public's money. Verify that management periodically tests internal control policies and procedures to ensure that they work, and have management report the results of those tests to the board. For example, have management trace a single material transaction and the controls that were applied to it from its point of origin to its inclusion in the financial statements. Ensure that there are internal controls for monitoring payroll and hourly work documentation for accuracy of hours and wage rates. For example, ensure that independent management reviews of payroll are completed and documented after the pay period, but prior to payroll processing. Verify that the coding of payments and recording of transactions in the school's accounting system, known as journal entries, are reviewed and approved by an independent member of management. Ensure that someone other than the person making manual journal entries reviews the entries, and that the board approves manual journal entries. Specify a limit on spending that management must follow when purchasing goods and services, and require board approval of spending over the limit. Following are questions that you may want to ask to help prevent audit findings due to weak or non-existent internal controls. Has the school documented internal controls and organized internal control policies and procedures in an internal control manual? What policies and procedures related to internal controls exist, and how are they organized and accessed? What are some ways that specific duties are separated within the school's internal control structure to prevent errors and fraud? What specific internal controls exist for journal entries, receipts, bank account reconciliation, payroll, procurement, check issuance, cash handling, and credit card use? What, if any, findings related to internal controls did the school have in prior years, and how is the school preventing them from reoccurring? How will management test the internal controls to see if they are effective? And when will management report testing results to the board? Now that you have reviewed the law, learned ideas from other charter boards, and considered questions, let's look at ways you can support school success. By understanding and supporting the school's internal control structure, you can help prevent damages due to errors and fraud. By verifying internal controls for journal entries, receipts, bank account reconciliation, payroll, procurement, check issuance, cash handling, and credit card use, you can help achieve a clean audit. In conclusion, here are some potential next steps. Ensure management has the expertise and skills to effectively set up and manage internal controls. Verify that the school has strong internal controls for journal entries, receipts, bank account reconciliation, payroll, procurement, issuance of checks, handling of cash, and credit card use. Review a report that reconciles the financial activity in and out of the school alongside a list of all of the invoiced amounts for the same period at each board meeting. Require management to create a manual that documents the school's internal control procedures and policies, and test them to help ensure that they prevent errors and fraud. Analyze all past internal control findings identified in audits, and ensure that corrective action plans are in place to prevent them from happening again. Compare and contrast your school's internal control manual, policies, and procedures with those from other charter schools to gain and share ideas. Complete the other 2 mini-courses in this series to learn more about specific audit findings and how to prevent them. Contribute your ideas and tools for how to develop a strong internal control structure to help other charter schools. Information in this video is not intended to address specific questions or issues a particular school may be facing. Charter schools should work with their authorizer, auditor, financial service provider, lawyer, and staff to address any specific issues and to obtain additional resources. We hope this information is helpful in preventing audit findings and damages due to weak or non-existent internal controls.